So we've been looking at quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals are shapes that have how many sides? Who can tell me how many sides?
Four.
Four sides, okay. How many angles in quadrilaterals?
Four.
How many vertices?
Four.
So everything's four with quadrilaterals. The quad in front of quadrilateral means the number four.
A quad means four.
It does. And you'll see quad in other things. If you see the word quadruped, that means an animal that walks on four legs. Okay? So your vehicles that we drive on the road have four wheels, right? Most of them do. We call them, they're a quad vehicle. Okay? Has anybody ever rode a four-wheeler and some of them have the name quad in them? Ever heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where the quad.
Yes, but I've never been in one.
Yeah, but the quad represents it's got four wheels. Okay.
I rode one because my uncle has one.
And they have the word quad in it, don't they? Not all of them do, but some of them use it in there. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen and we're going to look at a little video about quadrilaterals and we're going to do a little activity with it, okay? I found this neat like video with, it really shows quadrilaterals. It like starts with a square and then shows you how you move from a square to other things. Let me make this be full screen and I'm going to continue. I stopped it at one point.
Hi, welcome to Math Antics. In this video, we're going to learn about special kinds of polygons called quadrilaterals. Quadrilateral is just a fancy math word for a polygon that has exactly four sides and four angles, like this one. You should recognize this shape, of course. It's a square, and a square is a special kind of quadrilateral. It's a quadrilateral because it has four sides, and it's special because all four of those sides are exactly the same length, and all four of its angles are exactly the same size. In fact, they're all right angles. Notice also that a square is formed by two pairs of parallel sides. These two opposite sides are parallel, and these two opposite sides are parallel. We'll see why that's important in a few minutes. Okay, so squares are an important type of quadrilateral. But we're going to make some changes to this square to see what other types of quadrilaterals there are. The two things that we can change are the sides and the angles. Let's start by changing the sides. Let's stretch our square in one direction so that one pair of sides is now longer than the other pair. This is what we call a rectangle. A rectangle is a quadrilateral that still has four equal angles. Notice that when we stretch the square, the angles didn't change at all. But it does not have four equal sides. Again, notice that just like a square, a rectangle is made from two pairs of parallel sides. All right, so that's a rectangle, but going back to our square, what if instead of changing the sides, we had just changed the angles, like this? What we have now is called a rhombus. A rhombus is a quadrilateral that still has four equal sides, but it does not have four equal angles. And once again, just like the square and rectangle, the rhombus is made from two pairs of parallel sides. Okay, going back once more to our square. What if we try changing both the sides and the angles? Here's what we end up with, and we call it a parallelogram. It's called a parallelogram because even though its sides are not all equal and its angles are not all equal, it's still made from two pairs of parallel sides. Get it? Parallelogram. Now wait a second. If that's the definition of a parallelogram, a quadrilateral that's made from two pairs of parallel sides, then wouldn't all these other shapes be parallelograms too? Exactly. All of these shapes are parallelograms, just like they're all quadrilaterals. It's just that we have special names for them if their angles are all equal, a rectangle, or if their sides are all equal, a rhombus, or if both their sides and their angles are all equal, a square. Okay then, if all the quadrilaterals we've seen so far are examples of parallelograms, what's an example that's not a parallelogram? Well, to see one, let's start over with our square again. But this time, we're going to change it by moving just one of its vertices, like so. Now, one of the pairs of sides is still parallel, but the other is not. And a quadrilateral that has only one pair of parallel sides is called a trapezoid. Well, actually, this is where classifying quadrilaterals gets a little messy. And that's because this sort of shape is called a trapezoid in America, but it's called a trapezium in other countries, like the UK. Trapezoid, trapezium, trapezoid, trapezium. It's a trapezoid! Oh. At least they both start with the word trap, so it's not too confusing, yet. Okay, so this quadrilateral is a trapezoid, or trapezium, because it has only one pair of parallel sides, and the other sides are not parallel. Here are a couple more examples of quadrilaterals that have only one set of parallel sides. All right then, what about quadrilaterals that have no parallel sides at all, like this one? These opposite sides are not parallel, and these opposite sides aren't parallel either. So what do we call this kind of polygon? Now here's the really confusing part. In America, this is sometimes called a trapezium. But isn't that what they call a quadrilateral with only one pair of parallel sides in the UK? Yep. Unfortunately, the same word is used to describe two different things in two different countries. Trapezium, 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 trapezium. Well, at least they both like football. But to keep things clear at Mathantics, we're not going to call a quadrilateral that has no parallel sides a trapezium. We don't think it needs a special name, so we're just going to call it a quadrilateral. So to summarize, any polygon that has exactly 4 sides is called a quadrilateral. And if it has no parallel sides, we still just call it a quadrilateral. But if it has one and only one pair of parallel sides, we call it a trapezoid or a trapezium. Or, if it has 2 pairs of parallel sides, we call it a parallelogram. And you've already seen that there's several types of parallelograms, called rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. All right, so that's the basics of classifying quadrilaterals. And there's a few other special types of quadrilaterals, but we've learned the most important ones. But there is one more really important thing you need to know about quadrilaterals. You need to know that the sum of the angles of a quadrilateral is always 360 degrees. Now that's pretty obvious for a square or a rectangle. Those shapes have 4 right angles. And since we know that a right angle is 90 degrees, 4 times 90 gives us 360.
I'm going to stop right there. That's as far as we need to go with that kind of a video. So I'm going to stop the share, but I'm going to still record. Because we're going to come back to this and you're going to help me out with some basics of labeling things that we've talked about so far. All right. First, we've looked at lines because we have to make lines first to be able to make the shapes. Get it where it's not so bright. Okay. Can somebody tell me what do I need to write to label what type of lines these two are? Not everybody all at the same time. Somebody tell me, what do I need to label these are, where they never will cross? Has the cat got everybody's tongue this morning? Are y'all still there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I come back.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't guess the cat's got your tongue yet this morning, so I hear you. So I'm gonna go back. What do we call these lines where they would never cross?
Parallel lines.
They're parallel lines, yes. Parallel. Good job. What about these where they come and they make this, where you could put a piece of paper in the corner and line up on both sides?
Angle.
It is a right angle, but what kind of lines would you call those? Begins with a P. Perpendicular. Remember that, perpendicular? That's a long word, isn't it? What about these where they do like this and they make a V? Think about this was a road, and right here where they cross over, what do you call that? The what in the road? Begins with N. Okay, it's got some tongues again.
Intersect. Yeah,
intersecting lines. You know, when you're at a road and two roads meet, you're at the intersection. Ever heard of that? Well, that's because they're perpendicular. It's an intersection is intersecting lines. Now, this is, the whole thing's called a what? Begins with an R, where you have this and then an arrow at the end. R-A-Y. What's that called?
Array.
Array. What do you call this at the end of where this means it keeps on going when you have an arrow, but if you have this where it stops or begins, it is the and there's another word that goes with it, the end what? Exact one.
End point.
End point. There you go. All right. So we have things with lines. We have parallel lines where they would never cross. We have perpendicular lines that meet at an end point, but they make a right angle, which is like the corner of a piece of paper. Then if we have intersecting lines and they make these, they cross over. And then we have rays. They have an end point, and then they would keep on going, okay? And so when we have two lines coming together, we have an end point as well. Now let's take a look at angles. Help me out with labeling these angles. When you see this symbol right here, what kind of angle is that one?
A right angle.
A right angle. A right angle is one where the piece of paper could go and it lines up with both sides of it. And here has a symbol like this, and it's smaller than the right angle.
Acute.
It's a little acute angle. Yeah. Now we have the big wide one that's wider. Big.
Obtuse.
Obtuse. You all are doing great with angles. And then what about if the angle just goes all the way out, big past obtuse, and it makes a straight line? What do we call that? Oh, I give you the answer, didn't I? It's a what? What kind of angle? When I was describing the line, I give you the name of what you call this angle. It makes a what?
A line.
What kind of line? Is it crooked or what's the opposite of crooked?
Straight.
Straight. It's a straight angle because it makes a straight line. I'm a right angle. It's a straight line, but it's also considered to be a straight angle. So now we have our right angle, the little acute angle, the big wide obtuse angle, and then a straight line, okay, which means a straight angle. And And then we're going to look at one shape and look at the attributes that describe it. Get it where it's a little bit better to see. Okay. So this one's a special type of it, but what do we call when we're looking at the inside? This, or if it even had the curved line?
A right angle.
This is the angle in a shape. What do you call this where two sides come together? Begins with the letter V. E-R.
Verb.
No.
Vertice.
It's vertices if it's more than one, but if it's just one, we say it's a vertex. It's a vertex for just one. It's vertices when we're talking about all of them, okay? Now, what do you call this right here? What is that part called of a shape? Any kind of shape, any kind of polygon. This is called the angle. You count how many angles. What do you call this? And count them. You're counting the what? We're going to start here. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 what? It has 4.
4 angles.
No, angles is in here. We're looking at this right here. What is that called? This shape has 4 angles and 4
sides.
Sides. This is a side. Okay. Now, this is something that we learned just recently. When you have 2 sides, and we'll see this arrow's pointing to this one on top and pointing to this one on the bottom. How would you describe those? What kind of sides are they? They are what sides? I'll put the word sides in relation to each other. The top and the bottom are what kind of sides to each other? Up. Go up. You can figure it out by that. Uh-oh, Kat's got some tons this morning. The top and the bottom are to each other.
Well, we're thinking like stuff like
Right and left? Are they on the same side, or are they on the? They're not on the same side. You're on
opposite side.
Opposite. There we go. Opposite sides, and the right and the left are opposite. Now this is a new one that we kind of learned. That light's kind of reflected. If they are coming together and connected to each other, come together at a vertex, what do you call those kinds of sides? We've not talked about it too much. Starts with the A, D. But you really don't hear the D when you say it. You do the J sound next. A J, a J.
Adjacent.
Adjacent. Sides that come together at a vertex are adjacent sides. Sides that are not touching each other, are opposite from each other, are opposite sides. Okay. This is the vocabulary we need to know about shape attributes. Attributes is just telling like characteristics of it, describing it. Attributes describe it. Okay. You can describe this with opposite sides, the vertex or vertices, how many sides, how many angles, and what's going on with the adjacent sides, sides that come together. So with this one, I could say adjacent sides come together and make a right angle. That's how I could describe that. So now I've got this, and I need you to help me with labeling the names of them. Boy, that light's really bright, isn't it, guys? Let's see if I move it away like this. Oh, that's much better. Okay, gotta get me a smaller pen. Who can tell me what name we need to give this one? All these were seen in that video except for the bottom one. What did he say in that video we watched is the name of this type of shape?
Parallelogram.
Parallelogram, because opposite sides are parallel and it does not have 90-degree angles. So I'm going to write it on there. Okay, what about this one right here? What's the name of this one?
Triangle.
A triangle? Remember, we're looking at quadrilaterals. How many sides? And quadrilaterals all have 4 sides. How many sides in a triangle?
4.
There's 4 sides in a quadrilateral, but by how many sides in a triangle? Triangles have TR means 3. Like a tricycle has how many wheels on it? 3. So a triangle has 3 sides. So we can't say triangle right here. Remember in that video, he started out with a square and then he stretched out.
Rectangle.
Yeah, made it be a rectangle. I thought that was neat how he starts out with a square and changes it to all the other ones. So what is this shape now?
Square.
Yeah, that one's the easy one. We know that one.
Rhombus.
Yeah, a rhombus just to me reminds me of a square that's kind of tilted sideways. Because look, if I turn this around, doesn't that look like a square to you right there? So a rhombus looks like a square just to the side. So really a square is a rhombus because I could turn that around and that looks like a rhombus right there, doesn't it? Okay. Now what about this one?
Trapezoid.
A trapezoid. Did you notice where he was pretending that he was from the guy from Great Britain? He called it United Kingdom. What did they call it in Great Britain? They called it not a trapezoid, but a... You remember what they called it there?
Trapezium.
A trapezium, yep. So it could be either one, but we're in the United States, so we'll go with what they say for United States and trapezoid. Now, they didn't talk about this one, but it's still
A kite.
And it's still a quadrilateral because it's got 4 sides. But we know we call this one a
Kite.
Kite. And for it to be a kite, it has 2 sides, adjacent sides that are the same length, and the other 2 adjacent sides the same length, and then opposite angles are the same length. You know, and I stopped the video before he got into talking about the angles and how many degrees they all are, and that all shapes have 360 degrees. We're not going to go that. That's what you start learning next year. Did you see that tool that was a protractor? It looked like it was straight on the bottom and it curved on the top. And it kind of looked like it had a ruler on it. That's a protractor where you measure angles. So next year you're going to learn to measure angles and tell how many degrees they are. The only one we need to worry about now is knowing that a right angle is, anybody know how many degrees is in a right angle? Not yet? Okay, there's 90 degrees in a right angle, okay? And so if you've got a square, you've got 90, 90, 90, and 90 here. If you added all those together, you get 360 degrees, okay? All right, so I'm going to stop share, right? Well, I guess I already have, haven't I? Stop the share. I'm going to stop the